I am the Celtic Kid.
This welterweight scrap should actually be a banger. I mean, I'm pretty stoked for this one. Jake Matthews, the Celtic Kid at 18-5, is a pretty decent minus 250 favorite in this one against Semi the Jedi, Matthew Semelsberger, who the last time we saw him, he did drop a unanimous decision to the great white Alex Morono. But if you remember how that fight went down, Alex Morono really controlled those early stages, was able to win the unanimous decision, but that third round was all Semi the Jedi. He really turned it on late, and it was good to see him have such a nice gas tank for him to be as dangerous as he was in those later stages of the contest, and in a fight that he was really getting kind of dominated by Great White. So although it was a loss for some of the Jedi, some good takeaways for sure. And before that, we got to remember he's rifled off two great wins. Beat AJ Fletcher, beat Martin Sano Jr., and those are two bad fighters for sure, but Semi the Jedi noticeably improved from losing to Chaos Williams and then winning those next two afterwards. It was he seemed to level up after each fight, and then again there were some positive takeaways against that Alex Morono fight. So that loss brought him to 4-2 in the UFC, 10-4 overall, and again he's a plus 210 dog in this one, and taking on Jake Matthews, who at minus 250 is already making his 17th UFC appearance. He's 11-5 in the promotion and 18-5 overall. The Celtic Kid has been around since 2014, right? This is a guy who joined the UFC at age 19. We were just discussing, he was kind of like the Raul Rosas Jr. before Rosas Jr., right? He was of the same exact thing except in 2014, where this teenager was coming into the UFC, all sorts of hype, and initially he did live up to the expectations, right? He won his first two, but then he ran into a peak James Vick, got submitted, and then went 2 for his next 4, and things got a little sketchy. But since then, he picked up a lot of nice wins, right? He beat Lee the Leech, beat Diego Sanchez, and most recently he beat Andre Fiallo. And we don't quite yet know how good Andre Fiallo is, since he's really hit a rough spell as of recently. But nonetheless, those were some pretty solid wins for Jake Matthews. And his only losses in that span was to Tony Martin and to Sean Brady back in March of 21. So some decent losses as well. Curious to get your thoughts on this one, Meat. Do you think that Semi the Jedi is ready for the Celtic Kid, or were you that impressed with what Jake Matthews showcased against Fiallo, and he's going to do the same thing to Semi the Jedi? Who are you taking?
Yeah, this is actually a very fun fight. Some of the Jedi I think is no joke, but I think Jake Matthews is that guy to get it done. I think the odds are pretty on point. Plus 200 underdog for Semi, plus minus 240 for Jake, and I think Jake is honestly a lock on this one. I don't like the odds because, Semi the Jedi, he's kind of an X factor where he could show up being the best in the world or, absolutely getting smashed by Jake Matthews. I think Jake Matthews is just getting better and better every fight, especially after that Sean Brady fight. His last fight, he looked absolutely spectacular, so I imagine he's better than he was his last fight if he's been putting in the work. And so I think Jake's going to get this done very convincingly. I could see a very gritty decision because Semi the Jedi is no joke. Like, he's a tough son of a gun, and Matthews, he's going to have to throw a lot of coconut bombs to really get him out. So I think he's going to get a KO maybe in the third round, but wouldn't surprise me if it goes decision.
Yeah, I feel that. And Semi the Jedi is still young too, right? He's only 30 years old, and he's going to have the reach advantage, going to have the height advantage. He's a big guy. He's really long with his punches, and some of his best finishes in the UFC were fights that literally had just started, right? He absolutely flatlined Jason Witt, aka the Vanilla Gorilla, sent him straight to BKFC, and then again did the same thing to Sano Jr. with the first punch. So I think the most dangerous moments of the fight is likely those first few minutes when Semi the Jedi is really fresh and is able to put a lot of snap behind those punches. But I like your idea of Jake Matthews just being a little bit more well-rounded than some of the Jedi and likely finding ways to take this thing to the mat or maybe use his strength to push up against the cage or use some clinch work and find ways to dominate the contest in that regard. I do, however, think that Semi the Jedi, even though he is a plus 210 dog, does have some life in this one because, again, this is a guy who's extremely tough, very well-rounded. We just kind of think that Jake Matthews will be a little bit more well-rounded. And if we look at Tapology, 92% is rolling with the Celtic Kid. Most is beige for that decision. There is, however, a decent sliver for that Brown KO. Any chance that Jake Matthews pulls off a finish in this one? I mean, we know him, at least historically, as a guy who will win a lot of decisions or submissions. But most recently, he got a KO. So any chance Jake Matthews maybe gets a finish in this one?
Yeah, I think he will. Honestly, I like the KO. I'm very curious to see how the props look, but I like KO later in the fight, so second or third round. But man, Semi's a tough guy, so it wouldn't surprise me if it does go decision.
Yeah, I feel that for sure. I think I'll probably end up going decision, maybe a third round finish for the Celtic Kid if he can really just impose his will on Semi the Jedi. But we got a lot of respect for the guy from Frederick, Maryland in Semi the Jedi. Just think that Jake Matthews at 28, a guy who's been there, done that, been in the promotion for so long. This seems to be peak Jake Matthews, and I think that Semelsberger is just another notch on the belt for Matthews. And then who knows what happens, or who knows who he yields next. But should be exciting times up and coming for Jake Matthews for sure. So any last thoughts? We're both going Jake Matthews.
No, this is a great matchup, great fight. Can't wait. Throw in the comments who you got. You got Semi the Jedi or the Celtic Kid.